My name is Ashley Matthews, 36 years old, and I was sitting in my corner office when the email arrived. A legal notice. My parents were suing me for $2.5 million in parental compensation for birthdays and holidays they missed during 15 years of silence. The same parents who kicked me out at 18 with $200 and a duffel bag because my career choice disappointed them. Now they wanted a piece of my $45 million company. Their reason? They invested in my future by raising me. I laughed until I realized they were serious. If you're watching this and have experienced family betrayal, drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if you want to see more stories about overcoming family drama and building success against all odds. This story gets wild, so stick around to see how family karma eventually catches up to everyone. From the outside, our family looked perfect. My father, Richard Matthews, was a respected accountant. My mother, Deborah, a part-time real estate agent who primarily identified as a dedicated homemaker. We lived in a tidy colonial, in a good school district, with manicured lawns and neighborly block parties. The kind of place where everyone thought they knew each other, but nobody really did. Behind our glossy red front door, I lived in a pressure cooker. My parents had meticulously planned expectations for my life long before I had any say in the matter. Every achievement was merely meeting the baseline, never worthy of celebration. Getting straight, as meant I was doing what I was supposed to. Winning first place in the science fair was expected given your advantages. Meanwhile, anything less than perfection was catastrophic. My birthdays were particularly dreadful. Rather than celebrations, they became annual performance reviews. 2 weeks before my birthday, my parents would assess whether I had earned a party based on my academic record, extracurricular achievements, and general comportment. More than once, my birthday was canceled entirely because of a B+ on a report card or for being disrespectful when I questioned their decisions. When I did have birthday parties, they were stiff, formal affairs, designed to impress my parents' friends rather than bring me joy. My mother would parade me around like a show pony, boasting about my accomplishments while simultaneously whispering harsh critiques in my ear. "Stand up straight, Ashley. That laugh is too loud. Control yourself." Mrs. Thompson's daughter got into the advanced math program. Why didn't you? The stark contrast between my treatment and my younger brother Thomas's was impossible to ignore. Thomas, 4 years my junior, received endless praise for minimal effort. His C+ grades were showing improvement, his participation trophies prominently displayed. When he made the junior varsity soccer team, my parents threw him an elaborate celebration. When I became valedictorian, they simply nodded and said, "We expected nothing less." My father controlled every aspect of my life with spreadsheets and schedules. My mother enforced his regimen with emotional manipulation. I was permitted exactly 1 hour of leisure time per day, which often included mandatory piano practice or approved reading material. Friendships were carefully vetted. Sleepovers were rare privileges earned through exceptional performance. By 16, I had developed insomnia and anxiety from the constant pressure. My only escape was computer science, a subject I discovered in my sophomore year of high school. Coding became my sanctuary, the one place where I felt completely in control. The logic was clean, the feedback immediate and honest. I began staying late in the computer lab, telling my parents I was studying advanced calculus while actually building my first applications. When I shared my growing passion for technology, my father dismissed it as playing with toys. Both parents had decided long ago that I would become a surgeon. They had planned my entire educational trajectory: prestigious undergraduate program, top medical school, surgical residency. My opinions were irrelevant to this grand design. The final confrontation happened on my 18th birthday. I had been accepted to several excellent universities, including my parents' chosen school, Stanford. But I had also received a substantial scholarship to MIT for computer science. When I announced my intention to attend MIT and pursue technology instead of medicine, my father turned cold. "After everything we've invested in you," he said, his voice frighteningly calm, "this is how you repay us? With disappointment and disobedience?" My mother was worse. She cried manipulative tears, claiming I was throwing away my potential and breaking her heart. When I stood firm, insisting this was my life and my choice, their tactics shifted from guilt to fury. "If you're so determined to ruin your life," my father declared, "you can do it without our support. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. Stanford pre-med or you're on your own." I thought they were bluffing. They weren't. The next morning, I found my belongings packed in a single duffel bag. My father handed me an envelope containing $200 cash and a printout of my bank statement showing the $200 I had managed to save from summer jobs, despite their rule that I contribute most of my earnings to my college fund, which I now realized I would never see. "Since you're an adult making adult decisions," he said, "you can support yourself like an adult." My mother wouldn't even look at me. Thomas watched from the staircase, his eyes wide with fear, saying nothing. He was 14 and had just received a terrible lesson in family loyalty. I left that morning with my duffel bag, my meager savings, and the crushing realization that my parents' love had always been conditional. The first months of independence were brutal. With $400 to my name and no safety net, I found myself in a constant state of anxiety. I secured 3 jobs: morning shifts at a coffee shop near campus, afternoon work in the university library, and weekend hours at a local tech repair store. Between jobs, I attended classes on my scholarship, which covered tuition but not living expenses. My first apartment was a converted garage I shared with 2 other students. We split the $900 rent 3 ways, which still left me struggling to afford basics. I slept on a second-hand futon with a sleeping bag instead of proper bedding. My meals consisted primarily of ramen, day-old pastries from the coffee shop, and whatever I could get from the campus food pantry without feeling too ashamed. Despite the hardship, a weight had lifted. For the first time in my life, no one was monitoring my every move or subjecting me to constant criticism. The relief of this freedom gave me energy I never knew I had. During those first 3 years, I tried repeatedly to reconnect with my family. I sent weekly emails updating them on my classes and small achievements. I mailed Christmas and birthday cards. I left voicemails on holidays. The response was complete silence, as if I had ceased to exist the moment I chose my own path. My first Christmas alone was the hardest. The campus had emptied, my roommates gone home to their families. I volunteered for a double shift at the coffee shop to avoid sitting alone in our frigid garage apartment, then spent the evening watching the snowfall outside the library where I had found refuge to study. I called home one last time, rehearsing a message of reconciliation. The call went to voicemail. I never left the message. By my sophomore year, I had stopped trying to contact them. The repeated rejection was too painful, and I needed to focus my emotional energy on survival. I threw myself into my studies with the same intensity my parents had once demanded, but now driven by my own passion rather than fear of disapproval. My breakthrough came in junior year when I met Professor Susan Miller. Unlike most faculty who barely noticed the quiet scholarship student working 3 jobs, Professor Miller saw potential in me. She became the mentor I desperately needed, offering guidance without control, praise without manipulation. "Ashley," she told me after reading my project proposal, "you have a unique perspective that combines technical brilliance with deep empathy. That's rare in this field." Under her mentorship, I developed my first meaningful application, a mental health support platform initially designed to help students access university resources more effectively. The project won the department's Innovation Award, which came with a $5,000 prize, the most money I had ever possessed at once. I used part of the prize to buy my first professional wardrobe from thrift stores, understanding that presentation would matter for internship interviews. The strategy worked. I landed a competitive summer internship at a tech startup in Boston, which led to a part-time position during my senior year. My graduation day was bittersweet. I had achieved summa cum laude honors in computer science with a minor in psychology, credentials that would have impressed even my father. Professor Miller attended the ceremony, cheering loudly when I crossed the stage. The seats I had reserved for my family remained empty. After the ceremony, in a final act of optimism, or perhaps masochism, I sent a family group text with a photo of myself in cap and gown, along with news of the job I had secured at the Boston startup. The message showed as delivered but never received a response. That night, I deleted their contact information from my phone and made a promise to myself. I would build a life so undeniably successful that their rejection would become their loss, not mine. With my degree in hand and a position at Innotech secured, I finally had steady income and health insurance. My starting salary of $68,000 felt astronomical after years of poverty. I moved into my first solo apartment, a tiny studio in Somerville, that nevertheless represented incredible luxury to me, having a bathroom I didn't have to share with strangers. At Innotech, I quickly established myself as the first to arrive and last to leave. My colleagues attributed my work ethic to ambition, never realizing it stemmed from having nowhere else to go and no one waiting for me at home. Holidays and weekends became my most productive times, working while others celebrated with their families. After 2 years at Innotech, I had refined my mental health application concept based on my own experiences with anxiety and isolation. I presented the idea to the company leadership, envisioning it as a new product line that could reach millions struggling with similar issues. The rejection was swift and dismissive. Mental health apps are a saturated market with no clear monetization strategy, said the CEO, barely glancing at my business plan. Stick to enterprise solutions where the money is. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I had saved nearly $50,000 through extreme frugality, living well below my means despite my improved circumstances. I would use that money to build my vision independently. I submitted my resignation the following week. My colleagues thought I was crazy to abandon a promising career track for an uncertain venture. My direct manager, Martin, was particularly vocal about the foolishness of my decision. Female founders receive less than 3% of venture capital, he reminded me, as if I hadn't researched the statistics exhaustively. And without family wealth to fall back on, you're taking an enormous risk. I simply smiled and thanked him for his concern. Risk had been my constant companion since the day I left home with $400 in a duffel bag. At least now I was risking everything for something I believed in. The early days of what would become Mindful Tech were humbling. I returned to living on ramen in my tiny apartment, converting my living room into an office. I hired freelance developers from overseas to help build the initial prototype while I handled design, business development, and every other aspect of the fledgling company. 6 months in, with my savings dwindling and the application still not ready for launch, I experienced my first panic attack in years. Huddled on my bathroom floor at 3 a.m., I questioned everything. Had my parents been right? Was I throwing my life away on a pipe dream? The doubt was paralyzing. The next morning, I received an unexpected email from Rachel Kennedy, an angel investor who had attended a pitch event where I had presented months earlier. She was interested in discussing my progress. Our coffee meeting turned into a 3-hour strategy session, ending with her offering $150,000 in seed funding. I'm not just investing in this application, Rachel explained. I'm investing in you. Your resilience and clarity of vision are rare qualities I look for in founders. With Rachel's investment and mentorship, Mindful Tech officially launched. We released our first application, Mindful Me, focused on accessibility and practical tools for managing anxiety, depression, and trauma. Unlike existing apps that offered generic meditation guides, ours provided personalized support pathways based on user experiences and needs. The growth was slow but steady. By the end of our first year, we had 50,000 users and had secured partnerships with 2 universities to provide the platform to their students. Year 2 brought our first major corporate client, a tech company offering Mindful Me as part of their employee wellness program. Year 3 nearly broke me. A larger competitor launched a similar platform with massive venture capital backing, threatening to overshadow our carefully built community. Simultaneously, our main server crashed, causing a week-long service disruption. Users were leaving, investors were nervous, and I stopped sleeping entirely. The turning point came unexpectedly. A major healthcare system experiencing unprecedented staff burnout during a public health crisis reached out, seeking immediate mental health support solutions for their 20,000 employees. Their technical team had evaluated all available options and determined our platform offered the most comprehensive and personalized approach. The contract was worth $1.2 million, more than tripling our annual revenue overnight. More importantly, it validated our approach at a critical moment. Success cascaded from there. More healthcare systems signed on. Corporate wellness programs followed. User testimonials about how Mindful Me had helped them through their darkest moments began flooding our inbox. 5 years after launching, Mindful Tech employed 100 people and was valued at $18 million. 10 years in, we had grown to 250 employees across 3 offices, with a valuation of $45 million and over 2 million active users worldwide. We had expanded beyond the initial application to create an ecosystem of mental health support tools, including therapist matching services, workplace wellness programs, and specialized trauma recovery resources. Throughout this growth, I maintained a company culture centered on the support and compassion I had never received from my family. We offered generous parental leave, mental health days without question, and celebration of every employee's birthday. I instituted a family by choice policy that extended benefits to non-traditional support persons in employees' lives, recognizing that blood relations weren't always where people found love. As for my personal life, success brought recognition but not relationships. I dated occasionally, but never allowed anyone close enough to see the wounds that still shaped me. My therapist, whom I started seeing once I could afford it, gently suggested that my abandonment issues made intimacy frightening. She was right, but acknowledging the problem didn't solve it. The business magazines that eventually featured me painted a picture of a driven, innovative founder who had created a company with both profit and purpose. Forbes called me technology's compassionate disruptor. Incorporated put me on their cover with the headline, "Building Billion-Dollar Empathy." None of them knew the real story behind my mission, or the family that had once told me I would never be good enough. Until the day that Forbes' article caught my parents' attention, and everything changed. The Forbes profile was comprehensive, featuring a professional photo shoot in our headquarters and detailed financials about Mindful Tech's growth trajectory. The article mentioned my private personal life, but focused primarily on the business success, noting the company's current valuation of $45 million and my majority ownership stake. It was published on a Tuesday. By Wednesday evening, an email appeared in my inbox that made my blood run cold. The subject line read, "Your mother misses you." The sender, Deborah Matthews. After 15 years of complete silence, after ignoring every attempt I had made to reconnect in those early years, my mother had suddenly decided to reach out. The timing, just one day after my net worth had been publicly disclosed, couldn't have been coincidental. The email itself was brief. "Dearest Ashley, your father and I saw your article in Forbes. We are so proud of all you've accomplished. We've missed you terribly these past years and would love to reconnect. Family is everything, after all. Love always, Mom." I stared at those words until they blurred, emotions cycling through me like a hurricane. Anger at the audacity, a shameful flicker of hope that perhaps they truly regretted their actions, suspicion about their sudden interest in my life, fear that they could still hurt me if I let them. I showed the email to my therapist during our weekly session. "What do you want to do?" she asked after reading it. "Part of me wants to ignore it completely," I admitted. "But another part wants to understand why now, after all this time." "Those are both valid responses," she said. "Whatever you decide, remember that you're not that vulnerable 18-year-old anymore. You're a successful adult who gets to set the terms of any relationship in your life, including with your parents." After a week of consideration, I responded with a neutral email agreeing to a video call. I figured seeing their faces and reactions would tell me more than any written exchange. The call was scheduled for a Sunday afternoon. I prepared for it as I would a high-stakes business negotiation, setting clear boundaries in my mind and rehearsing responses to potential manipulations. Still, When their faces appeared on my screen, looking older but instantly familiar, I felt like I was 18 again, desperate for approval I knew would never come. Ashley, sweetheart. My mother's voice was warm honey, nothing like the cold dismissal of our last interaction. Look at you, so beautiful and successful. Richard, look how professional our daughter looks, my father nodded, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. We always knew you had potential, Ashley. Your mother and I have followed your career with great interest. The conversation continued in this surreal vein, with my parents acting as though the 15-year estrangement had been a minor miscommunication rather than their explicit rejection. They asked surface-level questions about my company, complimented my appearance repeatedly, and shared carefully curated updates about their lives, never once mentioning how they had thrown me out or ignored my attempts to reconnect. "And how is Thomas?" I finally asked, curious about my brother who had been 14 when I left. A brief shadow crossed my mother's face before her smile returned. "Oh, he's doing fine. Still finding his path, you know. He's living in the guest house at the moment, taking some online courses." After 45 minutes of this bizarre performance, I made an excuse about a work emergency and ended the call, promising to stay in touch with no real intention of doing so. The interaction left me deeply unsettled, like I had conversed with pod people wearing my parents' faces. The next day, my personal cell phone rang with an unfamiliar number. It was Thomas. "Ashley?" His voice had deepened but still carried the hesitant tone I remembered. "It's me. Do you have a minute to talk? Somewhere private?" I stepped away from my office into an empty conference room. "Thomas, it's good to hear from you. Are you okay?" "Not really," he admitted. "Look, I know what happened back then. I saw it all. I was just too scared to do anything." He paused. "I'm sorry. You were 14, I reminded him. "It wasn't your responsibility." "Maybe not then, but I'm 30 now," he said. "And I need to warn you. Mom and Dad, they're not suddenly interested in reconnecting because they miss you. They're broke." According to Thomas, our parents had made a series of poor investment decisions over the years, draining their retirement accounts. The house was mortgaged to the hilt, and they were 3 months behind on payments. They had seen the Forbes article as a potential solution to their financial problems. "They've literally been celebrating since that article came out," he continued. "Mom keeps talking about how her investment in you is finally going to pay off. Dad's already contacted a financial advisor about how to manage the money they expect to get from you." The revelation should have hurt, but instead, it clarified everything. "Thank you for telling me, Thomas. Are you safe there?" He laughed bitterly. "Safe but stuck. I made the mistake of moving back after college when I couldn't find a job. 5 years later, I'm still here, working for Dad's friend for barely minimum wage and living in the guest house because I can't afford my own place. They've made sure I'm completely dependent on them." Before I could respond, I heard a door open on his end, and his tone immediately changed. "Anyway, thanks for the professional advice about that tech issue, sis. I'll definitely try your suggestion." Then he hung up. 2 days later, I received another email from my mother, this time inviting me to dinner at their home. "We've missed so many special occasions with you," she wrote. "Let's start making up for lost time with a family dinner. Your favorite foods, just like old times." Against my better judgment and the advice of my therapist, I agreed. Part of me wanted to confront them about their real motivations, to look them in the eyes as they attempted to manipulate me once again. And part of me, a part I wasn't proud of, wanted them to see exactly what they had thrown away, how successful I had become without their support. If you've ever had to face people who hurt you deeply after achieving success, you know that mix of validation and vulnerability. Drop a comment about how you handled that reunion. While I prepare to tell you about the most uncomfortable dinner of my life, take a second to subscribe if you want to see more stories about overcoming family betrayal and building success on your own terms. Driving up to my childhood home felt like entering a time warp. The house looked smaller than I remembered, the once immaculate lawn now showing signs of neglect. I sat in my car for several minutes, gathering courage before approaching the front door. The doorbell's familiar chime sent a wave of anxiety through me. My mother opened the door wearing a dress I didn't recognize, and more makeup than I remembered her wearing. She embraced me with surprising strength, her perfume overwhelming. "Ashley, darling, welcome home," she exclaimed, as if I'd just returned from college for the weekend rather than after a 15-year absence that she had orchestrated. My father stood in the entryway, looking significantly older than on our video call. He had always been fit and commanding, but now appeared thinner, frailer, though his eyes still held that calculating look I knew all too well. "There's our successful daughter," he said, offering an awkward half-hug. Come in, come in. We want to hear all about your company." The interior of the house had been redecorated, but the most shocking change was in the living room. An entire wall had become what I could only describe as a shrine to me, covered with framed copies of magazine articles about mindful tech, printouts of online interviews I had given, and even a few photographs from my company website. It was as if they were displaying the memorabilia of a daughter they had lovingly supported throughout her career, rather than one they had disowned and ignored. "We're so proud," my mother said, following my gaze to the wall. "We've kept track of everything you've accomplished." Thomas appeared from the kitchen, giving me a subtle eye roll behind our parents' backs before hugging me genuinely. "Good to see you, Ash," he whispered. Dinner was a surreal performance. My mother had prepared what she claimed were all my childhood favorites, though several dishes were things I had actively disliked or had never been allowed to eat because they weren't nutritionally optimal. The chocolate cake she presented with flourish had been strictly forbidden on my actual birthdays, deemed too indulgent for a girl who needed to watch her figure. Throughout the meal, my parents rewrote our family history in real time. They spoke about how they had always encouraged my interest in computers and knew I was destined for greatness. My father claimed he had pushed me to be independent because he recognized my entrepreneurial spirit. My mother insisted she had worried every day during our years of separation. Thomas remained mostly silent, occasionally shooting me looks of disbelief at particularly blatant falsehoods. I maintained a neutral expression, allowing them to spin their fictional narrative while observing the strategic nature of their approach. "You know," my father said as my mother served coffee after dinner, "your success doesn't surprise us at all. We raised you to be exceptional, to think differently. That kind of upbringing costs money, time, and sacrifice. But we always knew it would be worth it to see you realize your potential." "Interesting perspective," I replied carefully. "So you feel your parenting approach contributed to my current success?" "Of course it did," my mother chimed in. "All those music lessons, private tutors, the emphasis on academic excellence. We invested everything in your future. Even when you chose a different path than we'd hoped," my father added, with practiced magnanimity, "we knew you had the foundation we'd given you. That's what good parenting is, giving your children roots and wings." I nearly choked on my coffee at the sheer audacity, but maintained my composure. "And what about the 15 years of no contact?" My parents exchanged a quick glance before my mother replied with rehearsed sadness. "There were misunderstandings on both sides. We may have been too strict, and you were at that rebellious age. But families forgive, don't they?" After coffee, my father suggested we move to his home office to catch up properly. Thomas made an excuse about a work assignment and retreated to the guest house, giving me a meaningful look as he left. I understood his message. This was when the real agenda would emerge. In the office, my father closed the door and adopted a more serious tone. "Ashley, we wanted to speak with you privately about something important. Your mother and I are in a difficult position financially." My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "We've had some setbacks with investments, and with the economy the way it is. The truth is," my father continued, "we're at risk of losing the house. Our retirement accounts are nearly depleted, and at our age, job prospects are limited." I nodded but didn't speak, waiting for them to reach the point. "We're not asking for charity," my father insisted, though that was exactly what they were about to do. "We see it more as a family investment opportunity. A loan of $500,000 would stabilize our situation, allow us to keep the family home, and secure our retirement. We'd never have to ask for anything again," my mother added earnestly. "And it would mean so much to us to know you care." The manipulative tactic was so transparent it was almost impressive. characterizing their request as an opportunity rather than a plea, framing it as a test of my emotional investment in them rather than a financial transaction. That's a significant amount, I said neutrally. I'd need to consider it carefully. Would you be comfortable sharing your financial records so I can better understand the situation? My father's expression tightened momentarily before he forced a smile. Of course, of course! I can put together a summary for you, though I would have hoped family trust would make such formalities unnecessary. Trust is built over time, I replied evenly. Speaking of which, may I use your restroom? As I left the office, I heard my mother whisper urgently to my father, though I couldn't make out the words. Instead of turning toward the bathroom, I slipped back into the office after they had moved to the living room, curious to see what financial records might actually be available. My father's computer was unlocked, his overconfidence making him careless. I didn't intend to snoop extensively, merely to verify Thomas's claims about their financial situation. What I found, however, was far more calculated than simple desperation. A folder labeled Ashley Strategy contained multiple documents, including one titled Financial Recovery Plan. Opening it revealed a meticulously detailed scheme to extract money from me through increasingly aggressive tactics, starting with the emotional appeal they had just attempted and escalating to potential legal threats based on obscure filial responsibility laws in our state. Another document outlined different monetary targets ranging from $250,000 to $2 million, with corresponding narratives tailored to each amount. For the lower amounts, they would express gratitude while hinting at ongoing needs. For the highest amount, they would offer to never bother me again if I provided a one-time family settlement. Most disturbing was a spreadsheet itemizing the parental investment they claimed to have made in me, including every expense from my birth through age 18, from piano lessons to orthodontia to the premium they had paid to live in a good school district. Each item was assigned a monetary value, with interest calculated over the past 18 years, resulting in a debt of over $2.5 million that I supposedly owed them. I took photos of several key documents with my phone before returning the computer to its exact state and rejoining my parents in the living room. The rest of the evening passed in a blur as I made non-committal responses to their continued financial hints, promising to think about how I might help before finally extricating myself around 10 o'clock. As I was leaving, Thomas walked me to my car. "So now you know," he said quietly. "I know more than they intended," I replied, showing him the photos I had taken. His eyes widened. "Jesus, they actually wrote it all down? That's... I didn't realize it was this calculated. Thomas, do you want to leave? I can help you." He looked back at the house nervously. "I can't, not yet. They've got too much leverage over me right now. But when you deal with this, and you will deal with this, I'll back you up. I promise." I hugged him goodbye, drove to my hotel, and spent a sleepless night planning my next steps. 2 days after the family dinner, I sent my parents a carefully worded email declining their request for financial support. I kept it professional and brief, stating that while I wished them well, I was not in a position to provide the funds they sought. I suggested several resources for financial counseling and debt management that might help their situation. Their response was immediate and vitriolic, all pretense of loving reconciliation abandoned. My father's email accused me of being selfish, ungrateful, and forgetting who gave you life and opportunity. My mother's separate message played on guilt, asking how I could sleep at night knowing my elderly parents might lose their home while I hoarded my wealth. I did not respond to either message, having anticipated this reaction from their strategic documents. What I hadn't expected was the escalation that followed. 3 weeks later, while in a board meeting, I received an urgent text from my assistant. A process server was in our lobby with legal documents for me. I excused myself, feeling a strange calm despite the situation. Somehow, I had always known my parents would never simply accept my refusal. The lawsuit was even more audacious than I had anticipated. Filed in family court, it sought $2.7 million in parental support and compensation based on 1. The exact itemized expenses from the spreadsheet I had discovered plus interest. 2. Emotional damages for the pain and suffering my parents had endured during our estrangement. 3. Lost opportunity costs for the financial support they claimed they would have received had we maintained a relationship. 4. Compensation for every birthday, Christmas, and family holiday they had missed during the 15-year separation, which they claimed had caused them extreme emotional distress. Most bizarrely, they were attempting to invoke filial responsibility laws, typically used to require adult children to pay for nursing home care for indigent parents, despite the fact that they were neither in long-term care nor truly indigent, merely over-leveraged from poor financial choices. I immediately contacted Amelia Sinclair, one of the top family law attorneys in the country. Her initial consultation fee alone was $5,000. But this situation demanded the best legal representation available. I've seen some outrageous cases in my 20 years of practice, Amelia said after reviewing the lawsuit. But this is certainly in the top 5 for sheer audacity. The good news is that they don't have a legal leg to stand on. The bad news is that they know that. What do you mean? I asked. This isn't really about winning in court, she explained. It's about pressuring you publicly. Notice they filed in their local jurisdiction rather than yours, ensuring this would be covered by their hometown paper. They're betting on public sympathy for abandoned elderly parents versus the wealthy, ungrateful daughter. She was right. The next morning, the lawsuit was front-page news in my parents' community paper, with quotes from my father about how heartbreaking it was to be forgotten by my successful daughter after all we sacrificed. By afternoon, several larger publications had picked up the story, and my company's PR team was fielding media inquiries. Most concerning were the calls from several of Mindful Tech's key corporate clients, expressing concern about the negative publicity and how it might affect their association with us. Our company's mission centered on mental health and family healing, making the lawsuit particularly damaging to our brand identity. While Amelia prepared our legal response, I received an unexpected call from Thomas. They've gone completely off the rails, he said, sounding shaken. Since filing the lawsuit, they're constantly on the phone with reporters, giving interviews in the living room, posing for sympathy photos. Dad started talking about writing a book called Abandoned, A Father's Journey. Are they pressuring you to support their version of events? I asked. They haven't directly asked yet, but it's coming. Dad keeps making comments about family solidarity and how everyone will need to do their part. He paused. Ashley, I can't lie for them anymore. I have documentation that contradicts their claims. Thomas explained that he had kept a journal during his teenage years, including entries from when I was kicked out and the subsequent years when my parents actively prevented him from contacting me. He also had saved some of my early emails to him that had been secretly forwarded by a sympathetic cousin, emails where I had expressed my desire to reconcile and described my living conditions after being disowned. I should have spoken up years ago, he said, his voice breaking. But I was afraid of ending up in your position, and then I got trapped in their financial web. But I can't watch them do this to you. It's sick. With Thomas's permission, I connected him with Amelia, who arranged to take his official statement and secure his documentation. His evidence would be crucial in countering my parents' narrative, but I worried about the consequences for him. They'll disown you too, I warned him. Probably, he agreed. But I've been saving up secretly. I've got enough to get out and start over if I need to. And honestly, watching how you built your life from nothing gives me courage. As Thomas prepared to come forward, my parents escalated their media campaign. They gave a tearful interview to a national morning show, portraying themselves as devoted parents, blindsided by their daughter's success and subsequent abandonment. My mother cried on camera, saying she just wanted to hug her little girl again, while my father spoke solemnly about the sacred bond between parent and child that I had supposedly broken. The public response was mixed. Many sympathized with the seemingly heartbroken parents, but others questioned their motives, especially given the specific monetary demands. Social media was divided, with hashtags like "Support Your Parents" competing with "Toxic Family Lawsuit." The situation reached a turning point when my parents' lawyer, clearly sensing the weakness of their legal position, reached out to propose a settlement, a reduced sum of $1 million in exchange for their silence and dropping the lawsuit. Amelia advised, considering it purely from a business perspective. Fighting this will cost you hundreds of thousands in legal fees, plus the ongoing PR damage. Settling might be the cleanest resolution, even if it feels unjust. I understood her reasoning but couldn't accept it. If I pay them a single dollar, it validates their belief that children are investments with expected returns. I can't do that. Instead, I authorized Amelia to file a countersuit for defamation, harassment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. It was an aggressive move, but necessary to shift the narrative and demonstrate that I wouldn't be intimidated. The same day our countersuit was filed, Thomas publicly released his statement and evidence. The media narrative shifted dramatically when reporters obtained copies of my parents' financial recovery plan and the itemized spreadsheet calculating my supposed debt to them. Public opinion swung strongly in my favor as the calculated nature of their lawsuit became clear. One particularly damning piece of evidence was an email my father had sent to a financial advisor 3 days after the Forbes article was published, inquiring about the best way to secure assets from my daughter's company, considering she owes us for her upbringing. The advisor had responded with caution, suggesting family counseling rather than legal action, advice my father had obviously ignored. As public sentiment turned against them, my parents became desperate. They attempted to discredit Thomas, claiming he was mentally unstable and had always been jealous of my success. They tried to pressure former neighbors and teachers to provide statements supporting their version of my childhood, though few were willing once the full story emerged. In a final desperate move, they reached out to several of Mindful Tech's competitors, offering insider information about company operations in exchange for financial support of their lawsuit. Fortunately, one ethical executive immediately forwarded their email to me, providing yet another piece of evidence of their malicious intent. With their case collapsing around them and public opinion firmly against them, my parents faced a difficult choice: proceed to court with almost certain defeat and potential countersuit damages, or drop their lawsuit quietly and fade from public view. While the lawsuit drama unfolded in the media, I faced a critical challenge behind the scenes: preserving Mindful Tech's reputation and stability. The company I had built from nothing now employed hundreds of people who depended on its success for their livelihoods. I couldn't allow my personal family trauma to undermine everything we had built together. I called an emergency meeting with our executive team and board of directors to address the situation directly. Rather than minimizing the lawsuit or treating it as a purely personal matter, I chose radical transparency. As you've likely seen in the news, I began, my estranged parents have filed a lawsuit against me personally, claiming entitlement to a portion of my assets based on their role in raising me. While I had hoped to keep my private history separate from our company's mission, that's no longer possible. I proceeded to share the full, unvarnished truth about my upbringing, my parents' rejection when I chose my own path, and the 15 years of silence before they reached out after learning about my financial success. I explained the lawsuit's lack of legal merit and our counter-strategy. What I need to know, I concluded, is how you believe we should address this publicly as a company. Mindful Tech's mission centers on healing and mental wellness. We need to respond in a way that aligns with those values, even in the face of this attack. The team's support was overwhelming. Our COO, Marcus, who had been with the company since we had just 10 employees, spoke first. Ashley, you built this company by transforming your own trauma into tools that help others heal. That's the story we should tell. Not defensively, but authentically. Our Chief Communications Officer, Zara, proposed a carefully crafted public statement acknowledging the lawsuit while reaffirming our company's commitment to supporting healthy family relationships while also recognizing that sometimes family boundaries are necessary for mental well-being. We won't attack your parents publicly, Zara explained, but we will stand firmly behind our founder and the values that built this company. With the team's support, we implemented a multi-pronged strategy. First, we issued the public statement, which received positive coverage in business and tech publications. Next, We reached out personally to our major clients and partners, providing additional context and reassurance about the company's stability. Most powerfully, dozens of employees voluntarily shared their own stories about how Mindful Tech's supportive culture had helped them heal from family trauma, creating an organic social media campaign that highlighted the genuine impact of our work. Meanwhile, Thomas had moved into a temporary apartment after my parents discovered his cooperation with my legal team. Though they hadn't formally disowned him as they had me, they had cut off financial support and locked him out of the guest house, effectively rendering him homeless overnight. "It's actually a relief," he told me when I helped him move. Living under their thumb, always wondering when they'd weaponize their support, was exhausting. "I feel lighter now, even with nothing." Not quite nothing. I had offered Thomas a position at Mindful Tech, but he declined, wanting to establish himself independently. Instead, I connected him with several of my business contacts, who helped him secure a job in his field of interest. I also provided a no-interest loan to cover his first 6 months of expenses, with an agreement that he would repay it when financially stable, not out of obligation but as equals. As our legal position strengthened and public opinion solidified in our favor, I directed Amelia to pursue an aggressive discovery process, requesting detailed financial records from my parents. This strategy served two purposes: gathering evidence for our case and demonstrating that we were prepared to expose the full extent of their financial mismanagement and manipulative behavior. The discovery process revealed even more than we had anticipated. My parents had a long history of financial entanglements with family members, friends, and neighbors, often borrowing substantial sums that were never repaid. They had remortgaged their house 3 times, not due to medical emergencies or necessary expenses, but to fund lavish vacations and status symbols while maintaining the appearance of financial stability. Most disturbing was evidence that they had previously attempted a similar scheme with a wealthy uncle, threatening a lawsuit over unpaid family loans that never existed. That situation had been quietly settled with a family agreement that my parents clearly viewed as a template for extracting money from me. While these revelations strengthened our legal position, they also brought a deeper wave of grief. The parents I had once desperately wanted to please, whose approval I had sought even after their rejection, were not merely flawed or misguided, but methodically exploitative. The realization was both freeing and devastating. During this period, I channeled my emotional processing into improvements for Mindful Tech services. Working with our development team, I helped create a new module specifically designed to support users navigating family estrangement and boundary setting with toxic relatives. The feature, called Chosen Connections, provided resources for building healthy support networks outside traditional family structures. I also established the Phoenix Scholarship, a program providing financial aid, mentorship, and internship opportunities to young adults who had been disowned by their families or forced to leave unsafe home environments. The first cohort of 10 scholars included students from diverse backgrounds united by their resilience in the face of family rejection. As the court date approached, my parents' attorney requested a settlement conference. Their demand had dropped from $2.7 million to $800,000. Still an outrageous sum, but an indication that they recognized their weakening position. Amelia advised that we could likely negotiate them down further, perhaps to $200,000 or less. "It would be the pragmatic choice," she admitted. "End this quickly, minimize legal fees and publicity, move on with your life." I considered it carefully before responding. What message would that send? That harassment works? That parents can monetize children? That's not the legacy I want to create. Instead, I authorized a different approach. We would agree to drop our countersuit entirely if they 1. Withdrew their lawsuit with prejudice, 2. Signed a legally binding agreement never to contact me, my brother, or anyone associated with Mindful Tech again, 3. Issued a public retraction of their claims, 4. Participated in mandatory financial counseling. "They'll never agree to that," Amelia warned. "Then we'll see them in court," I replied. To everyone's surprise, including mine, my parents' attorney came back with a qualified acceptance. They would agree to all terms except the public retraction, which they claimed would be too humiliating. After consultation with Thomas and my leadership team, I accepted this compromise, wanting to end the public battle and focus on healing. 2 days later, the lawsuit was officially withdrawn. My parents signed the non-contact agreement, and the legal chapter of this family drama closed with far less fanfare than it had begun. The experience transformed Mindful Tech in unexpected ways. Our authentic handling of the crisis resonated with users and potential clients alike, leading to our largest quarterly growth ever. More importantly, it deepened our commitment to addressing family trauma honestly in our products and company culture. As for me, I finally began to heal from wounds I had carried for over 15 years, not by reconciling with those who had hurt me, but by fully accepting that some relationships cannot and should not be saved. The family I had created through friendship, mentorship, and shared purpose had proven more reliable and loving than the one I was born into. Thomas moved to a city nearby and began rebuilding his life, discovering his own strengths and interests after years of parental control. We established a genuine sibling relationship for the first time, supporting each other without the toxic family dynamics that had previously defined our connection. The lawsuit that had been intended to extort and humiliate me instead became the catalyst for complete liberation from my past. My parents had unwittingly given me the greatest gift possible, the final confirmation that I owed them nothing and could move forward without a moment's doubt or regret. Though we had reached a settlement agreement, the judge required a final hearing to formally dismiss the case and review the terms. As I entered the courthouse that morning, I felt a strange sense of calm. This was the final chapter of a story that had shaped my entire adult life. The courtroom was smaller than I had imagined, with worn wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that cast everyone in an unflattering pallor. My parents sat on the opposite side of the room, looking diminished somehow. My father's perfect posture had given way to a slight stoop, my mother's carefully maintained appearance showing signs of strain. They did not look in my direction. Thomas sat beside me, his presence a quiet act of courage. He had risked everything to stand with me, choosing truth over the false security our parents had offered. Whatever happened next, this bond between us was perhaps the only positive outcome of the entire ordeal. Judge Eleanor Winters, a woman in her 60s with a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency, called the court to order. After reviewing the case documents, she addressed my parents directly. Mr. and Mrs. Matthews, I've been on the bench for 27 years, and I've seen many family disputes, but rarely have I encountered a case where parents so explicitly attempt to monetize their relationship with their child. Her tone was not angry but disappointed, which somehow cut deeper. The court recognizes your right to file this lawsuit, but also recognizes the defendant's statements that you severed your relationship with her at age 18, refused her attempts at reconciliation, and only re-established contact after her financial success became public knowledge. My father attempted to interject with their narrative about misunderstandings and a daughter's obligations, but Judge Winters raised her hand to silence him. The evidence submitted, including your own documented financial strategy targeting your daughter's assets, speaks for itself. This court is not fooled, nor should the public be, by attempts to reframe financial opportunism as parental devotion. She turned to me next. Miss Matthews, while the court acknowledges the pain you've experienced, your decision to waive any claim for damages against your parents demonstrates considerable grace. The non-contact agreement you've proposed is reasonable given the circumstances. With that assessment, Judge Winters formally dismissed the case with prejudice, meaning my parents could never refile the same claims. She also officially entered the non-contact order into the record, making any violation a matter of contempt of court. As we stood to leave, Thomas whispered, "Is it wrong that I expected to feel more? I don't know, vindicated?" I understood exactly what he meant. I think we're both realizing that no legal victory can heal what was broken. It just lets us move forward. As we gathered our belongings, my father approached despite his attorney's attempt to hold him back. For a moment, I thought he might make a scene, but instead he simply said, "You've won." I hope you're satisfied." There was no remorse in his voice, only defeat and lingering entitlement. "This was never about winning," I replied quietly. "It was about ending a cycle. Goodbye, Dad." That was the last time I saw my parents. According to the terms of our agreement, they underwent financial counseling and eventually downsized to a smaller home. Thomas occasionally heard updates through distant family connections, but I maintained the clean break established by the court order. In the months that followed, Mindful Tech continued its growth trajectory, exceeding all projections. Our valuation reached $60 million by the end of the year, and we expanded our mental health services to include specialized support for family estrangement, intergenerational trauma, and rebuilding after toxic relationships. The Phoenix Scholarship Program flourished, expanding to 20 recipients annually. Working with these resilient young people became one of the most rewarding aspects of my professional life. Many reminded me of myself at 18, determined to build something meaningful despite losing their family support. Witnessing their progress helped heal my own lingering wounds. Thomas found his footing professionally and personally, discovering talents our parents had never acknowledged. He developed a passion for architectural design, eventually starting a small firm specializing in affordable housing solutions. We established a tradition of monthly dinners, gradually building the kind of supportive sibling relationship we should have had all along. The lawsuit had an unexpected impact on Mindful Tech's company culture as well. After being so publicly vulnerable about my own family trauma, employees felt safer sharing their experiences. We enhanced our benefits to include more comprehensive mental health support, extended family leave policies to include chosen family members, and implemented a no-questions-asked personal day policy for employees navigating difficult family situations. On a personal level, the resolution allowed me to finally address the walls I had built against intimacy. With my therapist's guidance, I began dating more openly, eventually meeting Eric, a kind and patient pediatrician who understood my complex family history without judgment. Our relationship progressed slowly but steadily, built on mutual respect and honest communication. The most healing moment came unexpectedly, on what would have been the 15th anniversary of the day I was thrown out of my parents' home. Rather than ignoring the date as I had for years, I decided to reclaim it. I invited Thomas, my closest friends, and key mentors like Professor Miller to a celebration I called my rebirth day. 15 years ago today, I told the gathered group, I was told I wasn't good enough, that I had failed my family by choosing my own path. For years, I carried that rejection as a hidden wound, pushing myself to prove my worth through achievement. But looking around this room, I see the truth. Family isn't defined by DNA or legal obligation. It's built through love, respect, and choice. As I looked at the faces of those who had supported me unconditionally, who had celebrated my successes and stood by me through challenges, I finally understood that I had never truly been alone. I had built not just a successful company, but a life rich with genuine connections. I still carry scars from my childhood and the betrayal that followed. Some wounds never fully heal, but I no longer define myself by what was taken from me or what I was denied. Instead, I focus on what I've created, what I've overcome, and the people who choose to be part of my journey every day. The company I built is more than a business success. It's tangible proof that pain can be transformed into purpose, that rejection can lead to revelation, and that the family we choose can be more nurturing than the one we're born into. I'm not that abandoned 18-year-old anymore. I'm a woman who built her life from the ground up, and no one can take that achievement away from me. If this story resonated with you, please let me know in the comments how you've dealt with family betrayal or built success despite difficult beginnings. Your experiences matter, and sharing them helps others feel less alone. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more stories about overcoming family trauma and creating success on your own terms. Thank you for witnessing my journey, and remember, your worth isn't determined by those who failed to see it, but by the strength you find in moving forward, despite their blindness.